First, let's start with this case. Growing up in a South Asian household while living overseas, I've always known my parents to prioritize maintaining a certain image within the family. They often bend the truth or avoid sharing decisions that deviate from cultural norms. For example, my non-academic awards were sometimes portrayed as academic achievements. I also didn't pursue their dream of becoming a doctor, but chose a stable career path they could accept. It's frustrating and hurtful at times, but I've learned to accept this as how they navigate their world. However, a recent incident involving my engagement has left me feeling deeply hurt. After being in a relationship for 3 years, my fiancé, who isn't South Asian and follows a different religion, and I decided to get engaged. I had made sure my parents knew him well and liked him before we got to this point. My fiancé even asked my father for his blessing before proposing. They seemed supportive and we got engaged. I shared the happy moment on social media, thinking this would be a celebration for everyone. A few weeks later, I received a message from a family member back home congratulating me on my marriage. Confused, I hesitated to respond and decided to ask my parents about it first. That's when I discovered they had announced to the family back home that I was married, not engaged. When I confronted them, they initially brushed it off, saying it was best for the family to phrase it that way due to cultural perceptions. When I didn't back down, they changed their story, claiming they had gotten excited and accidentally used the wrong word. Regardless of their reasoning, I was upset. It felt like they had taken my special moment and reshaped it to fit their narrative, prioritizing their image over my truth. This not only caused confusion, but also forced me to explain the situation to my fiancé, who was understandably puzzled by the mixed messages. To complicate matters, some of my cousins who saw my engagement post first had already congratulated me, making the discrepancy even more noticeable. My parents dismissed my frustration as an overreaction and accused me of being difficult, a pattern I've encountered with them before. Now, they want to gift us money for a house as a gesture of support. While the offer is generous, my fiancé and I feel uncomfortable accepting it. My parents have a tendency to use monetary gifts as a way to compensate for hurtful actions, and this feels like another example of that pattern. I'm left feeling conflicted, grateful for their willingness to contribute financially, but deeply hurt by their disregard for my feelings and the truth of my engagement. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong for confronting your parents. They went public with a lie, and now they're acting like the resulting confusion is your fault. If you want any kind of peace and independence in your future, I would advise you to graciously decline your parents' gift of money towards a house. Gifts are freely given. Your parents' money has strings attached. You have to be practical about things like this. You know your parents are phonies. Nothing will ever change that. They will never simply be proud of you for being their daughter. They are who they are. Just take the money and buy the house or invest it. Not taking the money is cutting off your nose to spite your face. You don't have to actually forgive them or forget how they have hurt and disrespected both you and your fiancé. But don't leave a literal house on the table because of pride. It's stupid and immature. This investment could set you and your partner and any kids you may have up for huge success in the future. It could mean early retirement or paid-off university for kids. Your parents won't give you honest love, but they will give you this. Choose yourself and take it. You're not in the wrong. I'm white, and having a baby with my South Asian partner and his mom thinks we're married. We're not even engaged. Everyone's keeping it a secret from his dad. I feel lucky that my family doesn't have these strict societal norms, but I respect that his family is different, and this is the best path for acceptance. For example, for us to even be living together, there's an assumption we're married. Having a baby out of marriage is a sin they cannot fathom. The log kya kahenge socheng, what will people say think, is so strong in South Asian cultures. Again, I'm glad I don't have to live my life with this worry, but I understand others, like your parents in their circles, do. You have every right to feel annoyed that your parents misrepresented the truth. You are living between two cultures with different expectations, and so are they. But they were raised in their more traditional culture, where what people think is very real. You don't have to agree with their actions. But I think remembering that they're balancing between two worlds is helpful. Give them a bit of grace, and ask them to talk to you about it beforehand next time, so you're not surprised. Can come up with a way to communicate something that you feel more on board with. And good luck with that, LOL. Aunties are gonna auntie. Next up, back in November 2018, I was arrested at work in front of my boss and coworkers. It was the most humiliating experience of my life. At the police station, I learned I was being charged with multiple felonies. This came as a complete shock to me. Fortunately, I kept my composure and immediately hired a criminal defense attorney instead of speaking with the detective. Retaining the attorney cost me $13,000, completely wiping out my savings. Even with a lawyer, I couldn't afford to pay my bond, so I ended up spending 54 days in jail. During that time, my life unraveled. At a status hearing, my attorney presented video evidence showing me gassing up my car 3 hours away from where the crimes took place. The charges were dismissed, but the damage was already done. When I was released, I found out I had lost my job, was being evicted, and my son was placed in the state's care. His mother is battling addiction, and I've been estranged from my own parents for 15 years. My girlfriend wasn't allowed to take custody of my son because she wasn't considered family. Since my release, I've learned that I can't sue the police, and that no one seems to care that I was wrongfully locked up for 54 days because of a detective's poor investigation. When I reached out to the local press, I was told that what happened to me happens often. They took my information but never followed up. Frustrated, I created a website to share my story. I included the police report and other documents from the discovery process. The sole reason for my arrest was an eyewitness who said they saw me. If the detective had done his job, he would have verified that I wasn't even in town on the day of the crimes. It infuriates me that my life was ruined because of his laziness. Over time, my website gained traction. It's now ranked second in search results for my town's name. Since my town is a popular tourist destination, traffic to the site has quadrupled, and it has clearly caught the attention of someone important. Recently, I received a cease and desist letter. My attorney reviewed it and assured me that sharing my experience online isn't illegal. Everything I posted was factual or my personal opinion, which protects me from defamation claims. Yesterday, 2 officers and the detective who arrested me came to my house. The detective apologized, saying, "Mistakes can happen," and then asked if I would take down the website. I told him I'd consider it if he resigned and agreed never to work in law enforcement again. Unsurprisingly, he declined. The visit only made me angrier. The detective's apology felt insincere, clearly aimed at getting me to remove the website rather than acknowledging the harm he caused. I don't plan to take it down, and the only person supporting my decision is my girlfriend. My friends think I'm being spiteful and have suggested I just let it go. Am I in the wrong for keeping my website up? Update. I'm overwhelmed by the support I've received. Thank you to everyone who reached out with advice and encouragement. I never imagined that posting about my experience online would lead to so many resources. A litigator on Reddit even connected me with a colleague who practices in my state. And I've learned there is legal precedent for cases like mine. It could take years, but it's possible to pursue a civil suit against the state. For those asking for the website link, I've been advised not to share it publicly if I plan to move forward with legal action. To address some concerns, my original post had to be shortened due to character limits. I tried to include everything relevant, but some details were left out unintentionally. The most important update is that my son is now back with me. It took a lot of paperwork and a court hearing, but we're together again, and that's what matters most. I'm deeply grateful for everyone's support, advice, and kind words. This experience has been overwhelming, but knowing that there are people out there who care has made all the difference. Thank you again for helping me feel seen and heard. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Seems like you're looking for validation, but I'll give it to you because that sounds like a nightmare. I hope your life improves from here. I love you. Take care. You're not in the wrong, even in the slightest. Good for talking to your attorney. maybe talk to another attorney to see if you have grounds for a lawsuit against the department. Clearly, you have substantial damages as a result of bad police work. Jury would be sympathetic, I am sure. You're literally the opposite of TA. You're a hero. Stand up against the broken system, and maybe you can prevent them from doing this again to someone else. Also, maybe the pressure will encourage them to offer you some kind of deal or settlement. Next up, my husband is furious with me, and I'm feeling conflicted about the situation. Last night, we had some friends over until 2 a.m. Unusual for us, but we hadn't seen them in a while and were catching up. We went to bed in good spirits. However, during the night, our child woke up multiple times, and I spent most of the night consoling her and sleeping in her room. Finally, just before 7 a.m., she seemed to settle, so I climbed back into our bed, exhausted. 5 minutes later, my husband woke up, scrambled out of bed, and started yelling, "Why did you turn off the alarm?" I hadn't touched the alarm. I wasn't even in the room when it went off. He turned on the bedroom lights, ran out, and began thumping around the house. I was beyond tired, so I pulled the blanket over my head and tried to sleep. He came back into the room, yelled, "Why aren't you helping me get ready?" and stormed out again, clearly frustrated. About 20 minutes later, he left for work, but left all the lights on in the house. He then texted me, saying he was upset with me. Here's why I feel conflicted. This isn't a new situation. He gets up at this time every morning, and I usually don't help him in the mornings. Despite this, he often asks me to, which feels unfair given our history. Our history. I wasn't always a stay-at-home mom. I still work part-time from home now, but I started staying home full-time 2 months ago at his request. Before that, I was a full-time working mom, and before that, I was the sole breadwinner working overtime while he went to college. When I was getting up at 5 a.m. to leave for work, he was still asleep until 10 a.m., and I never expected, or received, help from him. Even if I was running late, I made sure to be quiet so as not to disturb him. Unreciprocated effort. He has never made me breakfast, lunch, or dinner, yet he expects me to have these things ready for him now. I'm starting to feel like his expectations are unfair and one-sided, especially given that he didn't help me in similar situations in the past. So, am I in the wrong for not helping him get ready this morning? I'm considering texting him a long message to explain how unfair I think his expectations are, but I'm hesitant. I feel like I need to communicate how I'm feeling, but I also don't want to escalate things further. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong at all. But please don't wall of text him. Just tell him, we need to have a talk when you get home. There is a lot going on here, and texting is not going to help any of it. Get your thoughts together today so you are ready for the discussion. You want to be cool and have all your points in mind, not have a shouting match. Boy needs a come-to-Jesus meeting, and you'll be best prepared by rehearsing your points in your head than angry texting back and forth all day, with the risk of saying maybe more than you meant. Words, once said, cannot be unsaid. You justifiably have a lot of words for him. Just be sure they are the right ones. You're not in the wrong. To be frank, he's acting like a child. He can get himself ready. He's an adult. That's not even taking into account that you were essentially up all night with your child and got no sleep. To be honest, it sounds like he wants you to be his personal servant. Nip this in the bud, or it'll be the reason you eventually divorce. The level of disrespect and entitlement he's showing is absurd. You're not in the wrong, but you are doing yourself a major disservice if you don't create a long-term plan for yourself. Figure out what you need to do to qualify for a future job that will give you financial security. Make sure you are using birth control, take classes, find a morning childcare program. Keep up the part-time work. Something so you aren't always this financially depending on him. Next up, to preface this, I, 24, am vegan and have been for about 10 years. I haven't eaten meat since I was around 3 or 4 years old, after finding out where it comes from. Spoiler alert, there were a lot of tears. This isn't a secret. Everyone in my life knows and, as far as I thought, respects this. 4 nights ago, I went to a party and admittedly got pretty drunk. My friends thought it would be funny to prank me by feeding me chicken nuggets. Before eating them, I specifically asked, "Are these vegan?" They replied, "Yeah, they're sun-fed, a brand of vegan chicken substitute." The nuggets tasted a bit off to me, but I figured it was just because I was drunk. Turns out, I was wrong. The next day, my sister messaged me and told me to check one of my friend's Snapchat stories. The story included clips of the nugget packaging, showing that they were regular chicken nuggets, not vegan. It also showed them giving the nuggets to me, including the part where I asked if they were vegan and they lied to my face. Later in the video, they mocked me by pretending to cry and yell things like, "The chickens!" I was humiliated and furious. I took a screen recording of the Snapchat story and went to the police to file a report for food tampering. As a result, 3 of my now ex-friends are facing charges. They think I'm overreacting to what they see as a harmless prank. In their view, it was just a joke. But from my perspective, they took advantage of me while I was drunk, tampered with my food, and publicly humiliated me in front of others. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. You're all forgetting that they uploaded a Snapchat video making fun of her too. It wasn't just food tampering. What kind of answers are these? Everyone sucks. You're pressing charges over chicken nuggets. You have a moral stance against meat. That's fine, but it's not a life-threatening allergy. It's absolutely a shitty thing for them to do. They aren't friends. They should be ashamed. But pressing charges is just way too much. It's like if you tricked me into wearing a real fur hat when I'm morally against fur. So I called the FBI and told them you were a domestic terrorist. Edit. With some time, the hat example doesn't make sense. I just can't think of something that's the equivalent of a chicken nugget. A chicken nugget is so generally unegregious. It's hard to find comparisons that aren't dramatic in comparison. Like people have said, imagine being tricked into eating your own pet. Doesn't quite match up to me. You're not in the wrong, especially since you hadn't eaten meat since you were so young. Oftentimes, vegans and vegetarians get very sick after eating meat if they hadn't for years before that. I know you didn't mention anything, and maybe everything was fine, but if you had had a bad reaction to the meat after not eating it for many years, it would have been on them. It's ridiculous and rude, and although I might not have pressed charges, I think it's your right to do so. Edited because I started getting a lot of responses and messages from people upset about my comment. I never claimed to be a medical professional. In fact, I stated many times in the replies that I have little knowledge on the subject. Feel free to research on your own.